What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Spring Practice Report. It's been a couple days. I was out of town, so there's a lot to catch up on. So much so that I didn't want to try and cram everything into one episode. So for today's, I'm focusing solely on the Big Ten and Big 12. I'll be back tomorrow on Tuesday. We're going to do the SEC and the Pac 12. And then hopefully Wednesday, no later than Thursday, we will do the ACC Independence and some G5s. There's been a ton of Notre Dame stuff coming out that I still haven't even had a chance to get to yet. So we're going to do recaps hopefully every day this week as we are leading into a bunch of spring games coming up. It's going to be a fun end to the month as a lot of these teams are wrapping up. So let's jump into it. Big 10 and Big 12 spring practice reports. All right, so we're starting with Illinois. Luke Altmaier transferred there to play quarterback out of Ole Miss after Jackson Dart had the season that he had, and he's been good. He's been playing and showing reps with the ones, showing leadership. Not much to take away from that. It seems like it's pretty much going to be his job. I did want to mention, though, that Cal Swanson, the freshman that David on our recruiting team and I believe even our own Felix Sharp was a big fan of, has been impressing. Now, he has only been playing with the developmental team, but he has been impressive in that. So take that for what it's worth. Possibly a guy to build on in your C5 Dynasty leagues or again, C2C leagues. Maybe you don't take him in the draft, but a guy to maybe pick up later in the year, something like that. But he's definitely impressing with the developmental team. Wide receiver Isaiah Williams, who had, a pretty decent year last year, has been balling out in practice, and they've said that his speed is evident. The team wants to find more ways to get him involved. We'll see what that means. We don't really view Illinois as this high-end flying offense. Brett Bielema there as head coach. I don't know that changes, but they are aware of how game-changing his speed is, and they want to get him more involved in the offense, whatever that means. Speaking of whatever that means, Iowa. Not much coming out of Iowa. Cade McNamara, though, has not really been practicing, which is interesting, considering he missed kind of the end of last year's season with Michigan due to some injury. They have said that he's out there. He's a leader. He's working with receivers and everything, but he has not been practicing much. And really, the only reports coming out of Iowa is that transfer tight end Eric All and Luke Lachey, yes, that Lachey, are getting a ton of buzz. They've been considered dynamic by the coaching staff. They believe that this is the best tight end duo in all of the Big Ten. But the one who's been getting the most love has been Eric All for his all-around skill sets. Again, take that for whatever it's worth. I mean, we do know Iowa knows how to develop these tight ends. So if you are looking at this from a campus to Canton perspective, maybe this is a good thing for Eric All moving on to the NFL. I'm not expecting much out of him on the college side of things. But again, they really seem to love what he is doing in Luke Lachey as well. They're talking a ton. You will see a ton of two tight ends on the field for Iowa. Both these guys could be fairly interesting. So next up, Michigan State. It is really hard to find some information on Michigan State. It feels like that first year that Mel Tucker came over, everything was open. They were happy to do all this stuff. That maybe it was because of the down season last year, 5 wins. They're not showing a lot, but Keon Coleman has looked good. They believe that he's primed for a breakout year this year. He's been very good in practice. Spring report so far. The only other really thing to come out of this is the QB battle. So I know Jared Palmgren has mentioned this on Chasing the Natty. I've mentioned it on here as well. Mel Tucker did come out and say that this is going to be QB battle. And I agree with what Jared said on Chasing the Natty at the time, in that you don't come out and say that about a fifth-year player if you don't really mean that. And it seems like he really meant that. So all 3 quarterbacks are getting reps with the 1s and the 2s. They're switching out quite frequently. Mel Tucker said this about the 3 quarterbacks. Thorne has the experience. Kim has shown, Noah Kim, who is currently the QB2 as of right now, has shown command of the huddle and the ability to make plays. While Kaden Hauser, the redshirt freshman, has great arm talent, has been accurate, and he shows a true belief in himself. All 3 throughout 4 spring practices have been within snaps of each other of winning the job. Now, I don't really know how to take this. You could take this as just coach speak, and he doesn't want these guys to transfer out. There are rumors that teams have reached out to Noah Kim about possibly transferring out. So maybe this is Mel Tucker's, coach speak to try and get all three of them to stay. I still believe, and maybe this is a little bit of bias, so take this with a grain of salt, that Kaden Hauser is the best out of the group, and there have been reports that he's looked the best, but he is still, as of right now, through four practices in, it sounds like the three. He has been taking the reps with the ones as the third guy. It has been Thorne first, Kim second, Hauser third. So still seems like a battle. It also seems like, based on the reports, that Tucker is willing to take this battle into fall camp. So we may not know anything this spring. I am looking forward to their spring game to see if we get anything different out of that. But, if I'm being honest, based on the reports right there, it seems like they like what Kim has to offer, which is kind of surprising to me. He didn't wow me last year, but he seems to be performing fairly well in practice. Michigan had their spring game this past weekend. If you're a part of the Campus to Canton Discord, you get to jump in and talk with Michigan's own Felix Sharp about that. I did not get a chance to watch it, but I did go back and read the reports, and it seems like J.J. McCarthy was up and down. Started out cold with an interception, but did finish the game strong. True freshman Benjamin Hall had the best game was the best player of the day. However, I'm not going to read too much into that. Now, he did have a couple good runs. I did see those, did see the highlights. And reports are that he had the best day out of all the running backs, but he was also only one of two running backs available on the day. Donovan Edwards, Blake Coleman have been out all the spring, and fellow freshman Cole Cabana was not available either. Not saying that this means Benjamin Hall is not going to be good, but I do think you have to factor that in a little bit, that he was the only one available. I don't know that that means he's going to. I saw a lot of he's going to be special on Twitter. Let's calm down a little bit. When you're the only running back available for a spring game, you're going to look special. Let's see what happens as the season progresses on. And if CJ Stokes is still that third guy, which I expect him to be behind Corum and Edwards. Moving over to Nebraska. Not a lot coming out of Nebraska here. A couple of interesting notes on position switches, though. Janaran Bonner. I have no idea how to say this dude's name, but he is going to be playing a hybrid tight end role. So Marcus Satterfield had spoken to Bonner here about being positionless in the offense. Bonner has seemed to take to that. He has looked very well. They're playing him at tight end, but they are moving him all around the offense within the formation at times, and he has been thriving in this position. So something to look out for. I know Jared Palmgren and Nick, I don't remember Nick's last name, but Nick did Chasing the Natty that dropped this morning talking about players with hybrid position roles. Bonner might be a very interesting one here for Nebraska with the way they were talking about him. The other player here is Jake Applegate, who was an edge rusher for Nebraska last year, but has now been getting looks at tight end. Applegate played tight end in high school, and they said that he excelled at that. And in fact, he's looked very good so far in practice playing tight end, specifically high pointing the ball, and he's got very good hands. Matt Rule and his staff seem to really like him there, so we'll see if it's going to be the Bonner and Applegate show at tight end and what that possibly could mean for the offense. I know we don't, at least at Campus to Canton, a lot of people don't necessarily love the hire of Marcus Satterfield at offensive coordinator, but I do think, again, with the kind of shallowness at tight end, or at least the ability to kind of really jump up and be a top guy, Bonner with his ability to play everywhere and having the tight end eligibility is at least fairly interesting. Moving over to Penn State, not a lot coming out of here either. We know Drew Allar's good. We know Nick Singleton's good. There's really not even much reports coming out of those two about those two. The only really stuff coming out is that Kaden Saunders has been getting buzz for being the smoothest receiver in the room and stringing together multiple good practices. So that's good news if you drafted him last year. Now, he was a year 1-0, which the theory that Austin Nace and Chris Moxley have kind of proven is that if you are a year 1-0, chances of you hitting beyond really any college production is fairly slim, but at least he is getting some buzz right now in Penn State where really no other receiver is, which is going to be interesting because we expect this to be a good offense with Drew Allar quarterback. Moving on to Ohio State. So on Saturday, they had their 8th practice, and it was also a spring scrimmage, what they call their Scarlet and Gray Annual Student Appreciation Day. Now, students and everybody to kind of come in and watch, and Well, if you were coming in to watch the offense, reports are it was not great. The defense definitely won the day. They forced an interception from Kyle McCord, and Devin Brown fumbled under pressure. Now, there was apparently positive moments from both of them, but neither one seemed to separate themselves. In fact, Ryan Day came out and said he would love to see one of these two guys create some separation for themselves by the end of spring. Now, again, could be coach speak because we did hear early last week that Kyle McCord was separating himself, but maybe he has taken a step back in the past couple of practices and this spring practice, the Scarlet and Gray Appreciation Day. But he did not seem to really favor either one of them. Now, their spring scrimmage, I believe, is on April 18th, so we're getting close to that. We're about 15 days away from their spring scrimmage. And Ryan Day openly said he would like to have a starter by the end of spring. So maybe we will know who that starter is. But according to Ryan Day, there's not much separation between McCord and Brown right now. So take that for what it's worth. The only player who's been getting a ton of buzz, and you guys know if you follow any of us on Twitter, it's Carnell Tate, who got an extended look with the first team offense this week with Mecca out. Marvin Harrison Jr. sat out pretty much the entire the entire practice. Julian Fleming has been out as well. And they've had him playing outside with Jaden Ballard. They did have Harrison in the slot for a little bit before he came out. And the freshman was apparently the main target for Kyle McCord and Devin Brown in the 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 sessions, including making several impressive catches. Brian Hartline was interviewed after the game on Carnell Tate and said that he is being very detailed. He's taking what they talk about in the meetings and applying it on the field. His technique and his attention to detail on every play has been extremely consistent. He's hitting on everything they're asking from him. That is extremely intriguing because, and I'll own up to this, I've talked a lot about how I think Brandon Ennis was the best of these freshmen. I thought once he got there, he was going to kind of take control of being that freshman to break out. If Carnell Tate continues to play the way he has this spring, I think it's going to be very hard for Brandon Ennis to pass him up, regardless of how much better I think Ennis is than Tate. Tate lost his black stripe already. He's running with the ones. Now, granted, Emeka and Julian aren't out there, but we saw last year, again, take this for however you want, even going back to his freshman season, Mecca was impressing in spring as a freshman and last year as a sophomore. And all the reports were, well, but he's running with the twos. He's getting this run with the ones because Julian Fleming's out and JSN's sitting out because of injury. So when they come back, Mecca's not going to get that role. Well, that changed come game one when Mecca was out there with the ones and making plays. And Julian never really got that spot back until JSN got hurt. I don't think that they're going to hold Tate back if he continues to impress and he continues to play, that he will get reps and he will play. Don't know that he's going to be this massive breakout as a freshman, but I do think he'll get reps, and that is bad news for a guy like Brandon Ennis. So they did give a little bit of love to Noah and Bryson Rogers as well. Moving on over to Purdue, and well, they just continue to say Hudson Card's going to be special. We'll see how much that really ends up being. Probably makes Colin Decker very happy, who's a big fan of Hudson Card. But Card apparently continues to impress here at Purdue camp, but he really seems to be connecting with TJ Sheffield. So if you're looking for that wide receiver you want on the Purdue offense, it looks like it's probably going to be Sheffield. Now, Brom's not there anymore, so how much does that really matter? I don't really know. But it definitely seems like Hudson Card and TJ Sheffield are connecting on another level. Moving on over to Wisconsin. So Braylon Allen was back at practice today. He was kept out of team drills, but he did participate in the skeleton drills. CJ Williams, transfer from USC, is getting a ton of love. So if you saw Corey Pereira or Debbie Lee tweeted out, Williams started the day with the second team offense, but by the end of practice, he had worked his way into the first team unit. The Badgers targeted Williams deep, and he came up with a big catch. He hauled in 3 deep balls on Saturday, including 1 diving catch on the 3-yard line. He had a bunch of chunk plays. There was no real double move or anything fancy, but he just kept getting open. That was from Saturday. Q to today, the day that this is being recorded on April 3rd, where they had another practice where, and I quote, CJ Williams had his best day of camp so far. He had 4 or 5 catches over 20 yards from quarterback Braden Locke, who was the QB2, and had one where he laid out for a ball, another where he high-pointed and made a contested catch, and the third one he made a catch out of bounds, but was able to get both feet down for a catch. CJ Williams, someone may have said was going to have a great year and be the one to target for that Wisconsin offense. I don't know. May rhyme with Matt Mooning. Said that he was going to be there. On top of that, he's been playing a lot in the slot, which I was not expecting. I thought he'd go outside. CJ Williams, I think, is going to be the guy. I know a lot of people loved Skylar Bell last year. Sorry. I really think it's going to be CJ Williams. Moving on over to the Big 12, going over to Oklahoma. And we know Dylan Gabriel is going to be the starter. He's been consistently doing what the offense is built for him to do. He's continued to find receivers, make the right reads, and when he's had the chance, he's made big plays down the field. However, all the report, and I should mention that he is connecting well with Jaleel Farouk. So we've seen a lot of that. I believe both Austin Nace and Colin Decker on Campus Life have been saying, hey, Jaleel Farouk's the guy for Oklahoma this year. Those two seem to have like an amazing chemistry. They picked up a bunch of chunk plays on their scrimmage Saturday. That being said, Arnold is impressing. So early camp reports said that he was kind of struggling at first. The speed of the game was kind of getting to him. Saturday, apparently, he looked phenomenal again. And many people believe, although he isn't pushing Gabriel for the starting job, Gabriel will be the starter. They believe that it should be a conversation that Arnold is looking that good. I still don't think he takes the job from Gabriel, but this has definitely got to be good news for Sooner fans, seeing how well Jackson Arnold is playing in spring alone. They believe he should be in the conversation for the QB1. Khalib Hicks has been making plays, had a couple big runs on Saturday. Gavin Sawchuk has looked good. But obviously the big news, if you were watching anything on Twitter, Nate Marquise tweeted this out as well. Javonte Barnes was seen in a boot cast on a scooter. So the report is that Barnes is dealing with a little bit of a dead bone of sorts in his foot. That's why he had the boot on. So it was confirmed that he has had this dead bone issue fixed. It was a non-invasive surgery. It was going all the way back to his high school career with an injury he suffered there. So that scares me a little bit, but they did report that he's fine. It was a non-invasive surgery, which to me sounds like that's okay, and that he'll be back for summer workouts. So sounds like he's probably out the rest of spring, but nothing long-term that he's going to be back for summer. And they said that the foot is fixed. The report was literally his foot is fixed now. It was a non-invasive surgery. So that part of it, I'm not a doctor, but that does sound good that the foot is fixed, non-invasive. So sounds like Barnes should hopefully be back and is likely still going to be him and Gavin Sawchuk leading this backfield, even though Khalib Hicks is getting some love for his big plays. Sticking in state and going to Oklahoma State, Ollie Gordon. He was a guy we were kind of hoping was going to be the guy here for Oklahoma State's backfield. As Chris Berman would say, not so fast. So Mike Gundy was asked about a lot of his position battles this spring, and he said they're still waiting for Ollie Gordon to adjust physically to the physicality of the game. Said he should be fine, but he hasn't proven anything to us yet. We have to give him a chance, so we'll see what happens over the next few weeks, but he has to prove to us that he can be physical. Don't really love hearing that from a head coach on a running back position. On top of that, in that same sentence, he went out of his way to praise Elijah Collins, the transfer running back in, who he says is getting a lot of reps, and Gundy appreciates his maturity and what he brings to the position. I don't know if this means that you should fade Ollie Gordon, but a lot of people I know have been kind of hyping him to possibly be the guy for Oklahoma State this year, and it is still early. Doesn't mean he can't improve throughout spring and fall. But the fact that Mike Gundy is coming out and praising Elijah Collins and saying that Ollie Gordon needs to show us some physicality and prove it to us doesn't necessarily sound great. On the quarterback position, it does seem like Alan Bowman has the lead here. He's been acting very mature, and Bowman has handled himself well. They've been rotating them in all three groups. That is Bowman going with the ones, Garrett Rangel going with the twos, and Gunnar Gundy going with the threes. So Rangel and Gundy reports have been moving fairly well. You can see that they have matured since last year. And the last player that he mentioned was Zane Flores, who he said is showing us exactly what he thought he was last year. He's very athletic, very powerful arm, but he's still trying to figure it out. You can see there's a lot going on for him. So it doesn't sound great for Zane Flores coming in and possibly getting that job. Garrett Rangel and Gunnar Gundy seem both to be behind one Alan Bowman. Moving on over to TCU, both Chandler Morris and Josh Hoover had good days again in practice, 8 and 9. Looked up reports for 8 and 9. Chandler Morris and Josh Hoover both had continuing good days throwing the ball. Morris had a good connection with JoJo Earle and Jordan Hudson, while Hoover showed some good connection with Jared Wiley. The big reports, though, wide receiver-wise, we already know Cardale Russell out. JoJo Earle continues to make big plays. He's caught quick passes today, broke multiple tackles, didn't waste any time getting downfield. He also had a big catch for over 15 yards in the one-on-one team periods from Josh Hoover. So JoJo Earle making his name known here at TCU camp. Going on over to Texas, and this is the big one. So there was a lot of people, some of y'all out here, I went the y'all right there, the Southern draw y'all. Arch Manning is going to start over Quinn Ewers and blah, 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 blah. Well, reports from the spring scrimmage on Saturday and the spring practice from Friday. Arch Manning is clearly the third string QB currently in spring. While Manning has definitely made some good plays, he is extremely raw compared to Malik Murphy and Quinn Ewers. That scares me a little bit, especially when you mentioned Malika Murphy in that conversation, who I feel is a little bit raw in himself. Said he's still got a lot of learning to do before he's ready to compete for the job. When I say that he is clearly the third, as in they are talking as well, as that Malik Murphy is clearly the two. He had a decent scrimmage. He got sacked a few times, but is still showing some good plays in backup to Ewers. Specifically had a play where he bought time and threw a beautiful ball over the middle, perfectly hitting wide receiver Jonte Cook in stride. Quinn Ewers, both on Friday and in the scrimmage Saturday, had a mistake-free day. Said Quinn Ewers continues to look good and is making strides every day. Doesn't sound like Arch is competing for that job here, folks. Sounds like it is fairly well established. Quinn Ewers is the starter. Malik Murphy is the 2. And Arch Manning is the 3. Doesn't mean Arch won't be the starter next year, but I think even if Quinn struggles, you're not seeing Arch this year. We already know Jonte Cook's been on fire this spring. The only other player who's continued to stand out is Cedric Baxter. He's young. He's good. He looks really good, is what the coaching staff said. He's been extremely shifty. But the big thing that they've talked about is not necessarily his running, but how often he's been catching the ball in spring practices and in the spring scrimmage. This running back battle is going to be extremely interesting. Jonathan Brooks back, still not completely back and everything after dealing with that hernia surgery. We know we got Jadon Blue, who's gotten glowing reports as well, but Cedric Baxter just continues to get pumped up. And we have seen that Steve Sarkisian is not afraid to play the running back that he likes the most. He's mentioned multiple times how everywhere he's been, he's had a 1,000-yard rusher. In fact, you go back through all the way through his time at Washington, USC, Alabama, and now Texas. I believe the lowest rushing yardage, except for the year at USC where he got fired mid-year, and that running back still had 900 yards. You can't hold that one against him. I believe the lowest rushing total was like 1,100 yards. What? And on top of that, all his other running backs have gotten close over 100 carries and been in the 700 to 800 range, the running back twos for the most part. I think Baxter's in for a big year. I know everybody loves Jonathan Brooks and they're sold on him being the guy. I'm not quite yet. I want to see how the rest of spring and fall goes, but I think things could be a shift in here in this running back room. This might sound crazy to say. I would not be surprised if Jonathan Brooks or Jadon Blue is transferred out by the May 1st deadline. And I don't think it's going to be Blue. Going over to Texas Tech, senior wide receiver Dre McCray, who transferred in from Austin Peay, has been really the player everyone is raving about. He's been the best wide receiver so far this spring because of his speed. His speed has, quote-unquote, by the coaching staff, been a game changer. Not much else, unfortunately, coming out of Texas Tech besides that. So that will do it for our Big 10 and Big 12 reports here. Again, we'll be back Tuesday with a Pac-12 and SEC spring reports, and then we'll be back again hopefully Wednesday with ACC, some independents. We'll see. I don't want to commit yet because Wednesday is a big day. If we do not back on Wednesday, we'll definitely back on Thursday. Thank you guys so much. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn that bell icon on so you don't miss any of these spring practice reports. And we'll talk to you guys again tomorrow night.